Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Richard Dick Coughlin, 000 here again. Yet another video on the same day. Aren't you lucky? And I'm doing it on my phone because I can do this, and it looks really dramatic. No, it doesn't. This is going to be a somewhat rambly, and I'm not going to fucking bother putting too much in this. This will be my last video. To you, James, 1978 forever. I did a video the other day on determinism, responding to James's video about determinism, and he's then subsequently he did a response to that. It was pretty dreadful, and he's done a follow-up video to that, which is even more bizarre. I'm just going to try and get through. I'll leave links to all of it below. I'm also going to leave a link to Invincible Numinist's video response to James. James, I know you don't like Numinist, but he did a good video response, and you should... I'm just going to go through it. Okay, James, number one. I know people say this to you a lot, but I'm saying it to you now. Calm the fuck down. You don't need to get so worked up and excited. And this is me. So, I get worked up and excited all the bloody time, but you seem to do it over everything. This is me you're talking to. You don't have to get defensive or worried or... I'm not offended by anything you say. I think you're wrong. I think you don't get it. That's the real issue here. You don't get it. Your video response to me was called Determinism, a Religion for Rational People. Well, that doesn't sound like a necessarily bad thing, does it? I mean, I don't get it. But you also... You then trot out one of the worst arguments there has been, which is the accountability argument. Oh, in a society, in determinism, no one's accountable for anything because it's all predetermined. So why would you hold anyone responsible? Well, as people have pointed out to you, James, we hold people responsible. If you leave a paedophile in a room in a nursery, you lock him in there for a couple of months, you can pretty much work out what's going to happen. He can't help the fact that he has the feelings he has, but we still punish him for it. Because there's no one else to hold accountable, James. You seem to think that determinism eliminates choice. It doesn't. We still have choices. You have the choice to respond to me or not respond to me. But you did. Now, you could have chosen not to, but you didn't. Now, all people like me are saying is that it was inevitable that you were going to respond to me. You see? That's all it is. It's not about eliminating... We're not eliminating choice for anything. But it's the worst argument. Also, look at this. You missed the biggest point here. Determinism applies to everybody. In that sense, so if someone is predestined or predetermined to commit a crime, we are predetermined to punish them for it because we don't want them to do it again. And you say, why would we speak out and say anything about it? Why would we bother wasting our time? Because that's the choice we've made. That's what we're going to do. Because we don't know what the outcome is. That's the thing you don't seem to get here, James. Just because you believe in determinism doesn't mean you think you know what the answer's going to be, or you just think that there's a causal line of chain of events, and we can work out what they're going to be. It's an equation and something that's it's impossible to fathom for human beings. But that's all we're saying, right? That's all we're saying, right? The accountability, it's a dreadful argument, and it's not an argument, James. It's an appeal to consequences, which is a logical fallacy. You're always having a go at people about using logic and not being rational. Well, all you're doing in your video, again, you're emoting. I left links in my video. I left a load of links for you to go look at. Did you look at any of them? Did you do any research, James? Did you go and learn about this? You are quite clearly don't know what you're talking about. You don't understand determinism. You don't know how to respond to it. You haven't even looked into it. I mean, using the accountability argument is like me going up to a biologist and saying, where are the transitional fossils? That's all you're doing, James. You then refer to hard determinists, because now you're being specific, as scum and fascists. Scum of the earth and fascists. So when someone asks you, what do you think of Albert Einstein? You're going to say Albert Einstein was scum of the earth and he was a fascist. Muddy in the water, James, ad hominems, whatever you want to call them. It's not an argument, you're just emoting and being a reactionary. You then made a follow-up video to a user called Laser Blowfish, And all you were doing in that video was responding to one comment. You got like 4 or 5 video responses. You had loads of comments there. I read all your comments. And you picked one. And you acted as if that was the best argument you got. And you didn't even really respond to his comment properly. You misunderstood and twisted his words around. I don't know whether it was deliberate. But why are you responding to him? Why don't you respond to some other people? Why don't you respond to some actual arguments? Do you remember a little while ago, James, you made a video called Where Are Your Arguments, which was a response to Thunderfoot fanboys who were asking you where all these arguments were, and you went through all the list of arguments, and you berated them for not looking at all the arguments and like accusing Thunderfoot of just cherry picking the worst ones, which he does do. He cherry picks the worst arguments, ignores the better ones, because he wants to look good. That's what you're doing now. So what basis do you make that? You're the guy who sits there, James, and you constantly, in every video, you accuse someone of being a willfully ignorant, self-righteous hypocrite. And what are you doing now? Remember these videos next time you use that, right? I'm not having a go at you, James. I'm not trying to hate you here. I'm just trying to point out to you what's wrong here, what you're doing wrong here. You know? So you do a response to Laden Blowfish, and then you say that you're not getting involved in an academic debate. You haven't been in an academic debate, mate. This ain't an academic debate. This is a couple of cunts talking on the internet. This ain't an academic debate. Why do you think this is? You want to get worked up about it, but you started it, mate. You started it. You made your video accusing determinists of being like creationists, providing that you've still in 3 videos you haven't provided any actual arguments or genuine refutation or reason. You've just done appeals to emotion, right? You've just done you've done emotional appeals to consequence. And it's a fucking logical fallacy casserole, all your videos. But one of the biggest comments you made in your video to me was you said that you would rather die, you'd rather kill yourself than live in a world without free will. Well, James, you don't know whether you're going. You could be living in a world without free will. You have this argument saying if we live in a it's like when religious people say, well, if we live in a world without God, the world would be like this. Well, how do you know the world isn't without God? You don't know whether you're living in this deterministic world or this free will world. Burden of proof's on you, though, mate, as well. You want to say you believe in free will? I don't believe in free will. I believe we have will, and I believe we make choices, and I believe there are consequences, and we should be held accountable to them. And the motives are there, and there's motives as well. People don't do things they don't want to do. They want to do the things they do, but we always hold them accountable. Right? Whether it's their fault or not. So you said you'd rather die, James. Aren't you the guy who goes on about ideology? You're becoming the thing you hate, James. Right? Remember this. You're becoming the thing you hate. Right? And so let's just do a summary here. Right? You talk about a subject you don't really understand. You attack the people who hold the position on the subject you don't really understand with ad hominems and insult. You're given research to do on it by people. You don't do the research on it. You ignore all the valid and in-depth and substantive arguments against it and cherry pick a couple that you feel you can respond to. You strawman people. You use logical fallacies, appeal to emotion, appeal to consequences. You refuse to acknowledge any of your mistakes. You refuse to acknowledge the fact you might be wrong. You use tired old arguments that have been refuted and dealt with, centuries ago. And then you state that you would rather die than accept that your belief isn't true. And then, when confronted with more opposition, you run away with your tail between your legs and say you're not doing it anymore, and call people names again. And you're telling us we're the religious people. Think on about that, James. Think on. Richard the Dick Coughlin, 000. Good night, mate. God bless.